next week. We're having a Zoom meeting to go over a bunch of them. Certainly didn't expect that much. Yeah, the first round was 11, then another 11 came in. No slam dunk.
I might need to do the time for you, I'll do it, and then I'll just call. So if just give me a look to that point, if it's not working, I'll give them a 1 minute. I'll keep trying to get the right setting, but it's not loading for some reason.
Hit it with a hammer.
That's what I do at home.
Yeah, works for me.
But I also don't want to break. But we'll give you that.
All right.
Here, that's not good.
Welcome. This is the October 21, 2020 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd,
Present.
Peters, Garcia,
Here.
Trethewey,
Here.
Arnshorst, here, Corbin, Hoekstra,
Here.
Raymond, here, Mayor Box.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We're going to begin our meeting as we have for many years, first with an opening prayer this evening by Councilmember Byrd, immediately followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And we would love to have you join us if you would.
Ask you to pray with me. Dear Father, we thank you first of all for this day that you've given to us. We know today some people didn't wake up. Some people ended up in the hospital. Others received bad news. So we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together as leaders of the city and convene on subject matters that pertain to this city. I pray that you give us wisdom, guidance, and understanding, an ear to hear, slow to speak, and wisdom to make these decisions. Lord, as we look across the landscape, we know there's been division sown. No blame on this person or this group or that group. But Father, I just declare your unity over this country, this great country, and unity over this city as well. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next are our consent agenda items. These items are considered to be fairly routine and have been reviewed individually by members of council and will be enacted in one motion unless a member of the audience or a member of council asks for a particular item to be removed from the consent agenda and placed onto the regular agenda. And before we give folks the opportunity to do that, Kathy, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
4B, approval of minutes, October 7th, 2020 regular meeting, and October 14th, 2020 study session. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, Holland Board of Public Works, declaration of surplus material, fall 2020. 4E, Planning Commission, proposed rezoning of 143 East 17th Street from RTRN, Traditional Residential Neighborhood District, to C1, Neighborhood Commercial District. Final adoption November 4, 2020. 4F, City Clerk, claims filed against the city. 4G, Community and Neighborhood Services, approval of grant contracts for the purchase of recycling carts from Eagle and the Recycling Partnership. 4H, Finance, resolution for Mercantile Bank of Michigan to add new finance director. 4I, August financial reports. 4J, purchasing, declare items as surplus. 4K, set public hearing for Towers on River LLC, request to approve brownfield plan for property at 159 River Ave. 4L, management and administrative services, 2021 strategic plan and business plan, quarterly progress update, July 2020 through October 2020.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Is there any member of the audience like to remove an item from the consent agenda and have it placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none. Any member of council who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda and have it placed on the regular agenda? None there either. Kathy, would you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion first, thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt agenda as presented.
Moved by Trethewey. We'll do support on this one too. I think
That
that'd
would
be a
be
good
good.
thing to do this evening. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? Now, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd,
Yes.
Peters. Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Corbin. Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Every meeting that the city council has, we do provide for a public comment period. That is part of the Open Meetings Act of the state of Michigan. Anyone who would like to address council may do so. Please, just a couple of guidelines and rules that we have here. One is, it is one-way communication. You are communicating to council. We do not respond or answer questions during this time period. Second, we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. The green light means that you're doing well on time. Yellow light means that you have just 1 minute left. And red light means that your time is up. And we are very strict about that. We do ask that you come to the podium. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. And I see we've got someone at the podium already, ready to go. So if you would please state your name and address for the record, and then communicate whatever you would like to council.
Yes, my name is Fidela, and I live in Central Avenue. De antemano sabemos que tú no das licencias, pero como mayor de esta ciudad tienes el deber de ver las necesidades de tu pueblo, y ese pueblo somos nosotros. Y por nosotros tú estás ahí sentado, y somos los que pagamos tu sueldo y exigimos una resolución ahora.
I'm going to be summarizing in English.
Certainly. Would you please come up closer to the microphone so that we can hear you? Otherwise, the folks at home can't hear you if you're not speaking at the
Sure.
mic.
Well, I'm going to be summarizing. She said, "Hi, my name is Fidela. To begin, I understand that you don't write the law about driver's licenses, but you still have a say. And repítemelo, Fidela. La última parte. Okay. But you are the mayor of the city, and you have to look out for the needs of the community. And those are our needs. It is because of us that you are here in your chair. We are the ones that pay your salary, and we want a resolution today."
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? We just ask that you wait a moment while our very able city manager cleans the podium in between. Please come forward. And again, would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Erica. I live in Central Avenue. Hasta el 2008, el estado de Michigan otorgó el derecho a una licencia de conducir a todos los residentes de Michigan que eran capaces y que pasaran la prueba de conducir práctica del conocimiento en el estado. Después la promulgación de la Ley Pública 7 del 2008 y para dar cumplimiento a la Ley Federal de Identificaciones Real ID Act, los solicitantes de licencia de conducir están obligados a proporcionar una prueba de presencia legal en los Estados Unidos. Este requerimiento afecta directamente a la comunidad inmigrante indocumentada, pues al no poder proveer los documentos de pruebas de presencia legal, se les niega el derecho de obtener una licencia de conducir en Michigan. La sociedad de Holland le da la bienvenida de trabajo inmigrantes para cultivar, cosechar y servir nuestros alimentos. Construir y mantener nuestras casas, cuidar a nuestros seres queridos y servirnos de muchas otras maneras. Sin embargo, como sociedad, no los invitamos a participar por igual en nuestra comunidad. Como sociedad, hipócritamente e injustamente los mantenemos como subclase, separando sus familias y negándoles los derechos humanos básicos. Sin una licencia de conducir, son incapaces de participar digna, plena y con igualdad en nuestra comunidad. Los inmigrantes indocumentados sin licencia de conducir sufren de una calidad de vida inhumana que afecta su capacidad de cuidar de sí mismo y de sus familias, así como la participación plena en esta comunidad y en ellos llaman hogar.
Thank you.
And I'll read it in English. Until 2008, the state of Michigan granted the right to a driver's license to all Michigan residents who were capable of passing the knowledge and practical driving test in this state. After the enactment of Public Law 7 of 2008 and to comply with the Federal Real ID Act, applicants for driver's licenses are now required to provide proof of legal presence in the United States. This requirement directly affects the undocumented immigrant community because by not being able to provide the documents that prove their legal presence, they are denied the right to obtain a driver's license in Michigan. Holland welcomes immigrants to work to grow, harvest, and serve our food, build and maintain our houses, care for our loved ones, and serve us in many other ways. However, as a society, we do not invite them to participate equally in our community. As a society, we unjustly keep them as an underclass, separating their families and denying them basic human rights. Without a driver's license, they are unable to participate with dignity, fullness, and equality in our community. Undocumented immigrants without a driver's license suffer from an inhumane quality of life that affects their ability to care for themselves and for their families. They are also barred from fully participating in this community they call home.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Mi nombre es Martín y vivo en la 128 West 31 Street. Otra vez estamos aquí para pedir una resolución. Holland es una comunidad hospitalaria que le da la bienvenida a los inmigrantes de todo el mundo, que vienen en busca de mejores oportunidades, en busca de una estabilidad de familia, de mejorar económicamente, de poder educarse, en resumen, una vida digna y de respeto para sus familias. Sabemos que los inmigrantes indocumentados tienen los mismos sueños, esperanzas y temores como todos. Cada uno de los miembros de esta comunidad, por eso estamos pidiendo que se nos reconozca como seres humanos que pertenecemos a este condado, que nos reconozcan como seres humanos que pertenecemos al condado, que nos apoyen en una lucha por la licencia de conducir y voten en favor de una resolución como ha hecho Detroit, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo y la Junta Estatal de Educación. Así sabemos que desde el 2008 los inmigrantes indocumentados que residen en California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Nevada, Nuevo México, Nueva York, Utah, Vermont, Washington, Washington D.C., New Jersey, pueden obtener una licencia de conducir porque el Departamento de Seguridad Nacional no impide la emisión de licencias de conducir y tarjetas de identificación. En noviembre 5 del 2019, los legisladores de Michigan anunciaron la legislación Drive Safe. Es un paquete de 4 proyectos de ley: seguridad, acceso, libertad y economía. Si esta legislatura es aprobada, la legislación se asegura que las licencias de manejo y tarjetas de identificación sean indistinguibles independientemente si una persona ha aprobado o su presencia legal en este país. En octubre 31 del 2019, reporta que el concepto de Drive Safe ha recibido el apoyo de... Entonces, esto es algo importante para mí y para la economía de esta ciudad. Y usted como mayor, una vez más, usted se dice que hace la bienvenida a nosotros los indocumentados, pero en realidad nos están haciendo aparte. Debería de ser Holland los que nos reciben. Yo he estado aquí por muchos años.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to read what he just read in English. I mean, in Spanish. I'll read it in English. Holland is a hospitable community that welcomes immigrants from all over the world who come in search of better opportunities, in search of family stability, economic improvement, education, in short, a dignified life and respect for their families. We know that undocumented immigrants have the same dreams, hopes, and fears as each and every one of the members of this community. So we're asking that we be recognized as human beings who belong to this country. Support our fight for driver's licenses and vote in favor of a resolution like Detroit, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, and the State Board of Education have done. We also know that since 2008, undocumented immigrants residing in California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, Utah, Vermont, Washington, Washington, D.C., and New Jersey can obtain a license because the Department of Homeland Security does not prevent the issuance of driver's licenses and identification cards to applicants who do not comply with the Real ID Act. On November 5th, 2019, Michigan lawmakers introduced the Drive Safe legislation, a package of 4 bills: safety, access, freedom, and economy. If this legislature is passed, the Drive Safe will ensure that driver's licenses and identification cards are indistinguishable, regardless of whether a person has proven their legal presence in this country. On October 31st, 2019, MLife reported that the Drive Safe legislation has received support from Governor Whitmer. She has publicly stated to us that she supports access to driver's licenses for undocumented persons. Her words were,
Mr. Mayor, that's been 5 minutes.
This is
I'm sorry
important
that
to
your
me.
time has expired.
Okay, yeah, this is the last sentence.
No,
This is
no,
important
we
to
are
me,
very
it
strict
is
on the time.
important
I'm
to the
really very
economy,
sorry.
And it is important to the
Ma'am?
Michigan community. That was the last sentence. Yeah.
Resolution now. Resolution now.
Resolution now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. No, ladies and gentlemen, this council does not make resolutions in regard to items that are not within our purview. Should we gavel it shut?
Mr. Mayor, suspend the rules and vacate the room.
Yes, we're suspending the rules. We are vacating the room. Council?
Resolution now. 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 Resolution now.
Resolution now.
Resolution now. Resolution now. Resolution now. Resolution now. Resolution now.
Yeah, we're still adjourned, so.
Let me tell you, Monday morning, Matt and I are gonna have a conversation. Yeah, you think, how seriously do you think he'll take that? There he is.
All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and I believe that we are still in the public comment period. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And I'm just, before you step up to the podium, Mr. City Manager, have you?
I have.
All right, then we're all set. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
So I'm Brad Slaw. I'm the state representative for the 90th House seat, and my residence is 7142 Riley Street in Zeeland. It's an exciting, not only here, but it's exciting in Lansing, and it's fascinating to be there at this point in time. As we look at elections and everything else that's going on in the world, Lansing has a bit of a little play in all of that stuff, and so it's an interesting time to be there. The legislature, in this last week, has passed and sent to the governor multiple bills that relate to how do we unwind from the executive orders and put stuff into law that needs to be in law. An example would be Senate Bill 1108, 1108. It allows for electronic meetings to continue on in the midst of a pandemic. Obviously something that we need, obviously something that we're interested in. It's those kind of things that we pass to try and make sure that the stuff that happened underneath the executive orders can continue it as it makes sense. Some bills that I'm working on personally that relate to either Holland City, the area, or our community schools would be 5059, House Bill 5059. It reimburses the ISD for dollars that are scraped off by the brownfields. So when we have a brownfield, there are dollars that were committed to the ISD but don't get there because dollars come off with the brownfield. And so this would just be a way to figure out how to put money back into the ISDs. It's only about $8 million across the state, but obviously each of those schools feels that impact. It's our voted millages, so it would be like our, anyway. Yeah, local operating villages, that kind of thing. So for us, I think it would be a big deal I know it would be a big deal for Ottawa ISD. House Bill 5211, and there's a companion bill in the Senate, are stuff that Roger Victory and I put in that would exempt homeless shelters from having to be licensed to do child care, like our one here in town does. So the homeless shelter has a child care. And it would only be in certain circumstances like the one that we have here, where we actually have agreements to be able to be checked on by police and some of those kinds of things. So 4733 is one that relates to speed control. Chief Messer has been instrumental in making that happen. And we've had testimony, he's been there for that. So I just appreciate you guys lending them to us to be able to make that happen. What it does is speed limits are set by speed studies. This is an opportunity to be able to take that speed study and then make sure that the law says you can't go over the 85th percentile, but the law also says you have to round up potentially. If you round up from the 85th percentile as the study was done, you're actually over the law. So we're trying to fix the things that are there. And 56 is, interestingly, the ability to use sand that's on your shoreline to be able to fill sandbags on the shore. And it's against the law to do that right now, so this would be an opportunity for us to try and make some changes. Anyway, so those are just some of the things that we're working on. Just want to make sure that I continue to touch base with you folks. If you ever have questions, if you think of things that we need, Keith Lee talks to me once in a while, but if any of the rest of you have that desire, please reach out. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Is there anyone else here who would like to address council at this time? Oh, and Mr. Van Beek, could you clean the podium in between?
I think I have one thing to do. I won't forget that.
You have many, many things to do. Lots of things on your agenda all at once. And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zealand. At the beginning of October, I have revisited the farmers market and the 8th Street merchants, talking to produce vendors and store owners. I have given them the LGBT ordinance and its punitive action to anyone who would be accused of discrimination to the LGBT individuals. They read it for themselves. I did not tell them much, except you passed it without community input. It was truly an LGBT proposal. I would like to report to you some of their thinking. Many were not surprised at this type of ordinance. They attributed it to the Mayor Bach's lawyer status and election. They concluded that by Mayor Bach's previous action, he would pressure the council to pass it. Many had made the connection to the fact that he was the chairman of the board of the Civic Center prior to the election and therefore was instrumental in arranging the drag brunch scheduled for a Sunday at 11 and 2 o'clock. He promised as Holland's mayor that he definitely supported the LGBT ordinance agenda. He assured the LGBT community that it would happen. To some, he is the hero delivering on his obligation to the LGBT lobby. To the rest of the Holland citizens, they view the change as a warning to their religious freedoms. I don't think most people in Holland would have ever thought the ordinance, with its direct wording from the Michigan Civil Rights Commission under Attorney General Nessel, would be so threatening to our community. Discrimination law, to be bringing groups together in mutual understanding and cooperation. From their conversations, I believe that they were offended, that they were not considered by this council, but were overridden by the pending activism, LGBT pressure. They felt blindsided. They were surprised who voted for it: Mike Trethewey, Raul Garcia, Scott Corman. Perhaps now you should reach out to your base and let them know your reasoning, just as a courtesy to them. They say you folded to the pressure of the mayor and his promotional LGBT agenda. Some cited that the city manager and the lawyer also folded in order to keep their positions. That is not my thoughts, but that was their comments. This is not about parking problems or littering. This is about people's livelihood and trust in their government to protect them. With COVID-19 shutdown and small businesses struggling to survive, who could withstand an accusation proven by only witness testimonies liberally enforced as the ordinance states? We have 3 or more empty stores on 8th Street already. How many would follow if one merchant had to endure your ordinance? There is a fear to make sure they do not cross the line. One woman's clothing store owner cited that a gay man wanted to purchase colorful pair of spandex pants, but complained that the zipper flap went in the wrong direction, as in women's clothing. He wanted the owner to discount the price. The owner did not accommodate the demand, but now that with the ordinance, would the lack of a discounted price promote a filing of an accusation of discrimination? The answer is yes. Just bite the bullet, because the State of Michigan Civil Rights Commission would consider it a violation. There is no way this ordinance has any protection for the freedom of conscience. I was informed by one of the farmers that an email went out to each one asking them to disregard my information ordinance because I was an outsider and not from Holland. I assumed that the memo came from the assistant manager's instruction to Sarah Corzolino, the market master. I discussed them with the farmers that I was from Zeeland, just up the road, and shop in Holland at the market. I had given them the exact ordinance as it was written on your website. Why would you not want them to know?
Mr. Mayor, that's 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, your time has expired. Thank you, Ann. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda, the special order of the day, public hearings, PA 198 tax abatement for Coops Incorporated, 881 Productions Place. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council.
Oh, hold on just a moment. Yes. Oh, yep, it's not yet on my agenda. Nope, that's all right. That's all right. Sorry about that, Mr. Van Beek. Please continue.
That's all right. So we have 2 guests with us tonight. First, we have Paul Brinks from Copes Incorporated. For those that may not exactly remember where Production Place is, it is, if you take 32nd Street out towards the east side of town, they have a couple facilities out there. So I think, Paul, it would be great to have him maybe just say a few things about what's going on at Copes. And then also, we're kind of doing double duty tonight, where Jennifer Owens is here from Lakeshore Advantage for an item later on the agenda, but she can also cover her item. You will recall that quite often I do my little calculation here where I talk about what the impact of a 198 agreement, and that information is in your packet where it talks about that it's kind of one of those 50% of something or 100% of nothing. So there is a calculation that talks about what Copes is trying to do here and what the impact of the request would be. So with that, I'm going to hand it off and see if Paul would like to come up and say anything to all of you and answer your questions.
Good evening. And would you please also state your name and address for the record? Even though the city manager gave us your name, we'd like to have it for the record as well.
No problem. Thanks, Mr. Van Beek. Paul Brinks, President and CEO at Copes Incorporated. Address is 830 Meadowbrook Ave, so a city resident of Holland as well. So what we're doing is we have 3 facilities in Holland, and what we're doing is we're doing an office remodel. And we're adding some additional bathrooms, making a nice break area, and then upstairs doing some training room for our customers to come in and do some training for them. So what that is going to do is that's going to enable us to free up some manufacturing space so we can bring in some other equipment to help with our manufacturing and machining processes. So I know this year has been really challenging for many, and I just want to thank everyone for their hard work and their dedication. I want to thank you for your consideration of this tax abatement, and I also just want to say that, you know, prosperity works when business and government work well together. And I just think like Lakeshore Advantage just really helps foster those great relationships. So if you have any questions on the project, I'd be happy to answer it, or questions about what we do as an organization, be happy to answer them now.
Any questions from council? Yeah, Quincy.
So I'd say over the last 2 years, you guys have come in here a few different times. Do you know how many times you've come here?
Yes, 3 times.
3 times.
3 times in the last 4 years.
That is pretty good.
We like to think so, yes.
I like, and the reason I say that is because of the growth.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, you look at the atmosphere we find ourselves in with COVID.
Yep.
And the ramifications of that, how it has adversely affected different companies. And to see that you are adding to your company, and in manufacturing, we know how floor space is a commodity. So
Absolutely.
to be able to expand that and open that, that's a plus for Holland. And I know you guys are far-reaching in the communities surrounding as well. So
Thank you, and appreciate your vote of confidence. That means a lot. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other comments, questions from council? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Appreciate your time.
Was Jennifer going to speak at this time as well, or?
You want me to give wait for the presentation?
Yeah, if she has something to add, maybe she'll do it when she gives her presentation later. How about that?
That sounds good. That sounds good. Then the next step is the public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing at this time. If there's any member of the audience who would like to speak in regard to this agenda item, now is your opportunity to do so. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing in regard to this agenda item. What is the pleasure of council?
Motion to adopt the recommendation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion by council? All right, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters. Yes. Garcia.
Yes.
Trethewey.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Corbin. Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item number 9, which is written petitions and communications. In this age of COVID, the City of Holland has created an email address specifically designed for public comment at our city council meetings. We do receive a number of emails each week. The cutoff time for those is approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon of the day of our regular meeting. And so if you're paying attention to what is listed under there, there are a couple of emails there that are in regard to agenda items that we actually dealt with last week. And the reason why those are, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, and the reason why those are there is because they came in after the deadline prior to the meeting 2 weeks ago. We do not read those into the record, but we merely accept them into the record. I would entertain a motion from council to accept the e-comments to public comment at City of Holland into the record.
So moved?
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Arnshorst. Is there any discussion? All right, Kathy, or no, I guess we can do a voice vote on this one. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is item 12E 2.1, adoption of housing development support policy and related documents. Mr. Van Beek.
So I'm going to make a guess here. This is a subject that we've spent some time on, a couple different rounds, I guess. And this was an item on study session last week. Mr. Cornelis is here that can go through this and answer any questions. What I'll do is just give a really brief overview and then be able to answer any questions, but maybe for the public, just so they know what this is. This is a set of a policy, and then additionally a tool that would be used and an application that would outline how the staff would evaluate the tool, and then also for potential developers that would be applying for this, that they could do a narrative. And basically, this is just a way that staff would be able to provide to council when you were being asked to use incentives, and particularly for housing, to have a sense of if it met the overall policy of council that you've set, but also would give a way to kind of say, okay, how does this match up with what you have all said are your goals that we would want to use these incentives for? I think it's important that as part of this policy, it speaks to that as a staff, we would revisit it annually and would come back to council because I think even as we've seen, and for some of you that are veterans, when we looked at past policies, these things can change somewhat quickly. So at one point, we were really interested as, in converting rentals to home ownership, which in some ways is still really important, but markets and situations can change. So this is something that even if, as we're recommending this for support tonight, this would be something that we would encourage as a process to go back and visit periodically to make sure that the goals that you all set continue to be fresh. And with that, I'd certainly welcome Mark to come up, but I think we'll just leave that with an introduction and then open it to any questions that council might have.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark. The majority of council has had an opportunity at the last study session to discuss this with you, but any questions from council for Mr. Cornelis? All right, wonderful. I would entertain a motion from council in regard to this agenda item.
Move that we adopt the recommendation.
Move by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Is that support by Raymond? Thank you. Sometimes my neck doesn't move quickly enough to figure out who it is. It's hard with the mask. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd, Peters, Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is 12E 4.1, Finance, Adopt Alternative Fuel Vehicle and Equipment Purchasing Policy. Mr. Van Beek?
Yes, I am going to allow Finance Director Emeritus to give a presentation on this momentarily, but just by way of introduction, for the viewing public primarily, this is connected to the Community Energy Plan, and by extension, it's connected to the Strategic Development Team that's just started working now. But it's connected to the Strategic Development Team of last time. Because just as a reminder of that structure works, we have Community Energy Plan, and the Strategic Development Team last time set a specific strategy or tactic to take a look at a policy. And at that point, it was just an alternative fuel vehicle policy. Those are then assigned to staff on a steering committee to investigate, to test, and then hopefully to operationalize those tactics. And the reason that this is before you tonight is because one of those steering teams did exactly that. We researched it. It was a great partnership between the city and the Board of Public Works. We took a look at what we thought was the best elements possible, and along the process, we actually expanded the tactic, the strategy, to include not just vehicles, but also equipment that we use. So the Holland Board of Public Works, their board adopted this same policy a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Time kind of melds for me, I apologize. But just with that background, I'm gonna ask Tim to come up and do a little bit highlight of the policy, and then can answer any other questions that you might have.
Thank you. It was about a month ago that council made the decision to purchase our first all-electric vehicle. And for whatever reason, that story got some legs, and I had a chance to talk with various reporters about that for whatever reason. It certainly is an interesting time we live in, and it was kind of a neat decision council made, because I think it does demonstrate to the community that we are interested and serious about trying to do something about this issue. So the policy that was assembled was put together, as Keith mentioned, by a task force. They did a pretty doggone good job. I'm glad I didn't have to write it, because it's quite in depth, and they researched other communities, I believe, and laid out some key pieces of this thing. But basically, it's not just about what kind of vehicle to purchase or what sort of equipment to use, but it also talks about getting rid of stuff we don't need, which I think we try to do that anyway. But there was a time back when we felt like there's too many vehicles parked against the back fence over there, and we downsized, and we've always tried to look that direction. This year, however, we decided to add a couple vehicles to the fleet because the building inspector, they are so busy that they just couldn't continue to share vehicles as they had. But the reality is we want to be responsible in the size of the fleet. And then secondly, we want it to be environmentally responsible as well, to make sure that we are making good purchases that are friendly to the environment. And then finally, as much as possible, move toward an all-electric fleet, or if that isn't sufficient yet, if the technology isn't there, if the costs are too far out of line, we will look towards maximizing that as close as we can, potentially with hybrids, potentially even with alternative fuels, which we don't know what that means yet. It could mean a variety of different kinds of things. In the past, we've tested out different kinds of biodiesel in our fuel tank systems. So we've worked and tried that in the past, but these are all things that this policy certainly envisions. But it also outlines ways that we will measure our success, and are we really reducing the carbon footprint? Are we decreasing our consumption in diesel and gasoline? And are we using our fleet better? Those are things that we're going to be trying to do. We do track all the gallons we use, by the way, in the city. We have a fuel consortium that we purchase with the school and with Max and with the BPW, and the four entities all share in purchasing fuel in a bulk way. And we know exactly how many gallons we use and what each entity uses. So we do already have systems in place. This policy will require reporting and monitoring and keeping track of what we're doing and how we're using it, and then presenting that information back to council. So we don't want to hamstring the budgets necessarily with this strategy. We've identified a threshold. If the cost is more than 15% higher, then we do not need to comply with this requirement. In the case of the Tesla, you can get into some really funky math in trying to determine how much you save by buying it, even though the upfront price is this, and you can do a lot of maneuvering with the numbers based on how many miles you drive and that sort of thing. But we certainly are going to be responsible with that. We've tried to put some battery operating equipment in our blowers and backpack blowers and trimmers and all those kinds of things. We've tried to get that started. There are some logistics that are challenging with that, keeping batteries functioning, for example, for a long period of time. And so we haven't figured out how to get all that done yet, but I think the technology will continue to change with us and allow us to move forward. So the policy, I think, is pretty well done. It has lots of detail to it. And as we said, the Board of Public Works approved this policy at their meeting. I believe it was the second Monday of the month. So are there questions about this policy, about the strategies we have as we look forward?
Any questions from council?
No, I'm glad that we're moving in this direction. You know, we're always slow, but we're very careful. So this is a good first step, and you've done my homework for me.
Good. I did not mention, I'd intended to, that it does have an idling policy contained in it. That's been a concern that some have had, why they see vehicles sitting idling, and it basically describes what is appropriate and what is not, and certainly that's all part of this conversation.
Any other questions, comments from council? I've got a couple, couple clarifications just for members of the public as well. This doesn't mean that we're going to be exclusively buying electric vehicles. It's only when it makes sense. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we know there's equipment that isn't robust yet enough to accomplish what we need it to do.
Okay. And then the other one that you touched on it, I was going to ask the question, it was regard to idling and the idling policy, that there are some vehicles that we do need to have them idling, like a bucket truck, for instance. The vehicle needs to idle in order to be able to power the bucket that's going up in the air. But it's my understanding we've looked at the possibility of purchasing maybe a diesel fuel vehicle truck, but that the mechanism that runs the bucket may be electric itself, and that those kinds of options are starting to become available, and we're going to be looking at those things, correct?
It's my understanding that BPW has ordered a vehicle like that. So as you described, that arm and bucket piece of it is handled with electric. And it's quite interesting, you know, with an engine, it runs all the time, like a chainsaw, for example. That's running all the time. I have an electric chainsaw, and when I take my finger off the trigger, it stops, right? So it doesn't continue to function. And that's similar with that sort of equipment. There some police vehicles need to idle because there's a whole bunch of electronics that are running in the background that none of us see necessarily, even if the lights aren't going. There's all kinds of things going on inside that vehicle. So there are some vehicles that do need to be running just to keep it functioning.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to point out to the public, it's a comprehensive policy that's covering a lot of those different kinds of things. And it's not just, we're going to go out and buy a bunch of Teslas. That would.
We're looking for donations for that
yes.
plan.
And then thank you for the image of you with a chainsaw in your hand. I had never thought about that before, but it's a great visual. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Yeah. What is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Motion to adopt the attached policy regarding alternative fuel vehicles and equipment purchasing.
Yes.
There may be someone that wants to make comment on this.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Please come forward to the podium. Well, actually, I think we need a motion first. Yeah, we do. We need a motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll wait. Support.
We've got moved by Trethewey, support by Hookstrud. Now we will take public comment in regard to this. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, I'm Dale Hoskins. I live down the street at 262 West 12th. Okay, I understand I have 5 minutes.
You have 5 minutes, 3 lights. There's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. Green light, you're doing well. Yellow light's 1 minute left. Red light is you're out of time.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me come and talk. I prepared a statement and I timed it, so I think I can do it. I've always been interested in energy issues. I'm an old enough guy that I say back during the oil embargo of the early 70s, it affected me changing my degree to nuclear engineering because I was concerned about energy issues. After working for 18 years in the electric power industry, I changed careers and I moved my family as missionaries to a remote place in Kenya. There we rented a simple concrete block house in a village. It had 2 solar panels. My sons enjoyed playing educational games on my computer. After a couple of years, we were asked to leave that house, so we built a mud house with a coconut palm roof. My inquisitive, now engineering son asked me, "Dad, why don't you just put a plug in the wall so we can have electricity here too?" I think of this story often, and I don't want to be insulting, okay? I just think of it, I'm talking about the public discourse. I think of this story often when I hear a public and political discourse on electric vehicles. Too many people start their thinking at the charging station and do not consider what goes into providing electricity to that station. I'm urging you to help the public see the full picture and communicate the full picture to the public. I'm grateful that you're concerned about energy and its impact on the environment, about the wise use of funds. However, I'm concerned you're not looking at the total picture. You may be, but I mainly my main source of information for what you're doing is the Holland Sentinel, and I'm grateful for that. I'm concerned your proposal may well have a net negative effect on the environment. I'm concerned that ethical and financial issues have not been sufficiently considered. I have 3 points. One is green energy. Are all electric vehicles indeed more green than ICE internal combustion energy vehicles. Not necessarily. This primarily depends on the power supply to the charging station. Barry Rutherford of BPW wrote in August in the Sentinel that ICE vehicles are only 20% efficient and the rest of the energy is lost in waste heat. He did not mention the numerous energy losses associated with electrical vehicles in the supply to the charging station. I'll list 4. Electric power plants that provide the electricity are only about 35 to 40% efficient. After the electricity is generated, there are line losses as the electricity is transmitted from the power plant to the charging station. There are energy losses in the vehicle battery, and there are some energy losses in the mechanical operation of the EV. Besides these factors, I read that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported that unless the source of energy to power these cars comes from solar panels, wind turbines, nuclear, or hydroelectric, their CO2 emissions will be much higher than gasoline-powered vehicles. Furthermore, the amount of electricity required to charge a vehicle is not trivial. The U.S. Department of Energy Alternative Fuels Data Center reports the cost of charging an EV for a 70-mile range is about the same as operating an average central air conditioner for about 6 hours. Point 2, ethics. Is the production of vehicle batteries on a massive scale ethical? Environmental and human rights advocates, along with World Bank and World Economic Forum, argue that the EV revolution is racking up a whole supply chain of trouble around the globe. There's often contentious new mines opening to meet the heavy metal demand and the coming tide of e-waste from old batteries. Are we considering the waste of all of these batteries? Amnesty International also reports about child labor problems in the cobalt mines in war-torn Congo, where 60% of the world's cobalt comes from. Point number 3, economics. You stated that electric vehicles will need less maintenance, leading us to infer they're financially preferable. I'd like to see an economic analysis that properly compares an EV and an ICE, looking at capital costs, maintenance, and operating costs over the same lifespan and interest rate. My guess is that electric vehicles are more expensive, unless, of course, they are heavily subsidized with federal, state, and tax incentives and rebates. CO2 emissions, supply chain ethics, and the coming tide of e-waste from old batteries. These are all important issues. I believe the citizens of Holland all want to move in a direction that's environmentally, ethically, and financially sound. Before you commit to an all-EV future, please carefully and objectively consider all of these factors.
Mr. Mayor,
communicate
that's 5 minutes.
them to the full picture. That's my last sentence. Thank you for listening tonight, and I look forward to hearing your responses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in regard to this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period in regard to this item. We have a motion, the second on the floor. Any discussion from council? Mr. Corbin?
Yeah, so the gentleman just spoke, he makes a lot of sense. I mean, we really have to really evaluate what we're doing in our energy, in the energy grid and our energy dependence. And so I think, as a policy perspective, I support this, but I think we really need to look at what we're doing and reevaluate it on a continual basis to see whether or not we're actually making the progress we're looking to make. So I appreciate the comments, sir, and I also appreciate the effort to putting this together, but we'll certainly be closely monitoring the evolution of this project.
Any other comments from council? Oh, and just to piggyback on what you said there, Scott, one of the things that we do from a larger policy standpoint, and not just in regard to this one, but with the community energy plan, is that reevaluation, and the strategic development team is actually meeting right now, and both you and Councilor Ernst are members of that team, so that'd be something to be discussing with them as well, and have recommendations for council moving forward. So thank you for that. Any other comments from council? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Yes. Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item is item 12E 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please read the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the following gifts: Department of Public Safety Services, Police Operations K-9 Unit Program, Disher, $1,000. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Motion to accept with appreciation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion by council? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, 12E 6.2, Economic Development Lakeshore Advantage Funding Agreement. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, so the action item before you tonight is to fund the agreement that we have in Lakeshore Advantage, with Lakeshore Advantage, similar to what we've done in past years. I'll take responsibility. It's probably a little bit later than what it should be. My apologies. You certainly can ask questions of Jennifer Owens tonight, but what we've specifically asked is maybe Jennifer just do a broader overview of what Lakeshore Advantage does in the region for the city, and then some of the other projects that they're involved with, both the Smart Zone, and I think she's going to talk about COVID also. So thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Thank you, and do I have a clicker? Can I
And we can also thank Jennifer also for serving on our planning commission while I disinfect the clicker.
And Jennifer, even though we've said your name multiple
Sure.
times, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Absolutely. So Jennifer Owens, 566 Lawndale Court, Holland. So I have a presentation to kind of prepare to share you, as Keith mentioned. We're going to touch base on our organization, the support in the city specifically, how we responded to COVID, our economic outlook, and then ask you a little bit to consider for future funding considerations down the road. So before I dive into the details, I want to make sure everyone knows who we are and what we do. A lot of you, I've done this presentation every year. I change it, obviously, but we're a nonprofit. It's a partnership between public and private sectors to fund our work. The majority of our funding comes from the private sector, has since we started in 2006. But with the public sector being a strong second partner in this, we focus on Ottawa and Allegan counties, and really our job is to keep our primary business base strong. And so those are companies that export goods and services out of the region and bring wealth back in. Essentially, they can be anywhere in the world or in the country. These are companies that are very mobile and choose to be in this region, like Copes, who you heard from today. And our job is really to act as an extended member of the city's team. And so we do that by proactively outreaching to those primary employers in the city, of which you have 111, according to our counts, that qualify. And our team, over the last year, and this would be the city's fiscal year, has had 312 interactions with those primary employers, some of them many, many times when we are dealing with a project or a challenge or an issue. So over the course of your last fiscal year, that's 72 unique primary employers. And some of those are very structured conversations where we're asking them the same survey conversations. Some of them are very specific, related to an issue, concern, or an opportunity. But we're out there representing you well and trying to overcome barriers to growth. And if you met with one company, each one's barriers are a little bit different. And so when people ask me, how do we do that? A lot of it is listening and understanding the thousands of tools and resources that are offered at the state, are offered at local units of government, federal government, and bringing those resources directly to employers to help them grow and invest in our community. And so over the course of the last year, we've worked on 13 business expansion projects alongside with those companies, helping them to invest in this community. Those projects were able to retain or create a little bit more than 700 jobs. And here's a look at that kind of diverse employment range here in the city. And many of these companies make products, but anything from ice cream to pharmaceutical drugs as well. So really across the board. And I think that's a great blessing for Holland that we have such a diverse base of primary employers. And we're happy to also be an extended member of their team to help them expand and grow. So a specific example, and I could probably do a story for each one of those, and when Quincy talked about, Copes, how many times they've been here, Hudsonville Ice Cream is another one who continues to grow and expand in the community. Great example of a company who could be anywhere in the country. Their ice cream is sold nationally, but they continue to invest and expand in the city. And we've worked with them to secure tools and resources to help them do that. And now Hudsonville is saying, let's take it a step further. We've got a great supply chain of other companies that we would like to locate near us as we expand to make it easier. So we're working with them to potentially attract suppliers here of their products or of their components to their products. So it's great to also work to attract businesses in who already serve our existing primary employer. And that relationship with Hudsonville continues to grow as they've made about a $35 million investment in the city. So, and then there was COVID, and the work that we had with the expansion projects was really fun, and it still is fun. It's still great, but oftentimes economic development in crisis situations, especially when it deals with the business community, we're on the front lines. We are their bat signal. We are the people to call. And when you have over 200 executive orders and not quite understanding them, our phones and our resources were blowing up. So I want to walk you through kind of what we did in COVID, but I also want to remind you that crisis is the foundation of Lakeshore Advantage. We were actually created in 2003 when Lifesavers unexpectedly announced they were closing their Holland manufacturing facility. It left the community flat-footed. We didn't see it coming, and a lot of it was because we didn't have a proactive organization who was understanding the business community, knowing the needs, knowing the challenges. Now, Lifesavers may have relocated anyways down the road, but at least we would have saw that coming and been able to quickly fill that facility. And so at that point, a group of business leaders came together and said, we have to create something that is laser focused on maintaining our primary business base. We can't wait for crisis. We've got to be ready to react. And in COVID, we were ready to react. And we swung into action. We connected, we educated, we advised, we advocated. Scott Corbin, who's here, also Allegan County Emergency Manager, we blew up his phone and other people's phones, but we knew who those individuals were who could give us the answers to help our businesses continue to operate. And like I said, the amount of work we did in a 2-month period of time was typical to about 6 months of interactions, outreach, discussions. Part of our work is always data-driven, so we also developed a series of quick polls where we're asking companies, what specifically are your needs in a structured format? And what we found is many of them were really struggling with navigating PPE and trying to figure out how to find PPE, where was it available, who had it. And so we swung into action for a short period of time to be a PPE navigator, because we also know people like Scott were overwhelmed with businesses ringing up his phone saying, where can I get some hand sanitizer, when he really should be working on a health crisis and in the public sector to respond to that. So we were able to take some of that off of our emergency managers and others' plates to help those companies navigate the PPE. Now, I'm happy to say at this time those needs have been met, so we stepped out of that, and that's really what we're designed to do, to pivot in and out as there are needs, and then in some cases have another organization take it over. So in the City of Holland, in particular, we helped about 20 of your companies navigate PPE, not only demand, but also should they make it and produce it. Just another way we pivoted in the COVID crisis. And then we took it one step further and we administered in COVID. So there were so many grant resources, and still are great state and federal grant resources. And the state of Michigan, of which we have a really strong relationship with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, decided very quickly within I think at end of March, to pool grant resources to provide to small businesses. And they asked our organization, along with 15 other organizations, to put out a small pool of these grants and vet them and award them. And so at that time, it was a $300,000 grant pool. We received over 2,000 applications and were only able to award about 31 businesses, but it was something, and we put together a new program, got that money out the door to help companies. Well, about 2 months later, the pool got a lot bigger and the resources were a lot stronger. And so because we had that past track record of administering that small pool, we were asked to administer about $3.3 million in small business grant funding to provide direct need to our companies who've been most hit in the COVID crisis. And we were happy to say yes and do that, although it wasn't in our area of expertise 6 months ago. So we received a typical number, similar number of applications, went through a process as quick as we could. We were also required to get the money out in a 2-month period of time. We had one foundation who full-time, they have this pool to award in a full year, and we had 2 months to get this money because it was a crisis situation. So we were able to award funds to about 428 small businesses, of which 144 of them were actually in the city of Holland to help move them forward and overcome the COVID crisis. So we did what we could, we filled the gap, and we continued to move forward. And we're still in COVID right now, but we still have to look forward and look at company expansions and opportunities. And although we're not booming with companies looking to expand because somewhat of an uncertainty, we still are working on about 34 projects of companies who are considering this region for growth. Many of those will take 2 to 3 years to come to fruition. So a lot of the things that we do, you don't know until it's public, but we're there working, navigating. About 8 of those projects are actually considering the city of Holland, either an existing employer or a growing employer. We're also continuing to ask questions and do our flash polls. We sensed a need in our HR community to ask them how they were doing, what the challenges were. And so this is actually a poll we released about a month ago with our HR leaders. Overall, they're navigating the challenges, but surprisingly, many of them are really having a hard time filling existing positions. So we're swinging very quickly back to recruitment issues and challenges. A lot of them are in entry-level production. We're continuing to see wages go high, very high for those positions. In fact, Parago, I think, is looking to hire about 150 employees in Allegan County. They're starting at $17 an hour for entry-level production. So I'm continuing to see wage growth and a true demand for talent, which is a good thing. We're kind of swinging back to where we were pre-COVID. Lots of employers are still allowing individuals, if they can, to work from home as well and working through a policy that makes sense for them. And then where we see one of our biggest needs is childcare. Availability of childcare continues to be a concern, as is affordable housing, which is another concern, which I know you know a lot about. But childcare, in the COVID crisis, we've seen many childcare facilities close. They don't have clients and they stopped operating. So that is a concern for a lot of employees who aren't able to go back to work because they don't have childcare. We also continue to work in the startup space as well. So although I talked a lot about the established companies, we also support employers from startup to grown up, from idea stage, these primary employers, to billion-dollar firms. And a lot of our work is able to move forward because of the Holland Smart Zone. So we continue to dream with the Holland Smart Zone entrepreneurs. And in fact, in June, we had a brainstorming session with them post-COVID to say, okay, what do you need? What are the opportunities? How can we continue to move entrepreneurship and future employers forward? And their top 3 needs are right here, of which we'll be working with the Smart Zone board and with all of you to see if we can make those become a reality. But I think you'll like to see number 2, which is fiber expansion. They love fiber. The entrepreneurs think it's so important for them. to have that fiber and access and really name it as a key amenity. We asked them what they loved about the community too. They love the sidewalks, they love the vibrancy of downtown, lots of great things to say about why this community is so special and why they're here. And we're also continuing to launch programming with our startups as well. So we launched a virtual program called Boost Camp about 2 weeks ago, of which we have 6 startup companies going through a virtual business development plan. We offered last week virtual programming and presenting like a pro, and we'll continue to move forward on incubator planning as well. So we are busy, and we are committed to maintain the foundation of our organization, and are so grateful that the City of Holland has been with us from the beginning and continues to be that strong partner. So as we look, and many organizations are, what our financial outlook is like for the organization, as many of the private sector companies are challenged to invest. At the beginning of COVID, we thought we would see about a 30% loss in our funding. Thankfully, that hasn't been the case this year due to some unexpected support from 3 very important partners. 2 would be the City of Zeeland, and Zeeland BPW actually stepped up and doubled their funding this year. They wanted to go above and beyond in economic development, and they saw the impact of our work, so they stepped forward for 1 year and said, we want to help you fill your gap. And then secondly, I mentioned those administration of the 2 grant programs. The first one, the small one, we got no administration fee. The second one, we received a 5% administration fee, which really helped fill our void. So this year, for this funding year, which we're on a calendar year, we're looking good. But what we ask for you as we look forward to our next year to continue to partner with us, and maybe down the road consider an increase of support if it makes sense, so we can continue to maintain our support systems here. I don't know what that increase might be. I hope I won't have to come and ask it again, but just wanted to tease it with you that, you know, that's something we're certainly watching as many of our business are challenged and investment becomes harder. So with that, thank you.
Oh.
And I love any questions.
Great. Any questions from council? Dave?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Jennifer, thank you for this presentation. I know I and a number of others on council have been watching Lakeshore Advantage for a number of years. The efforts that you've gone through, probably had some questions from time to time about the effectiveness, but I'm just super impressed with the breadth of options that you offer the business community and us as a city. And also the depth of it, it's really quite amazing. And I'm sure, you know, the economic climate wouldn't be nearly as strong in this area if it weren't for your efforts. So I just want to say thanks for coming through and continuing to do a great job.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Anyone else? Yes, Scott.
Yeah, likewise. Jennifer, you're a leader in your field. I mean, people look up to you and just your staff. I mean, it's incredible what you've done with your staff and the people that work for you and how you reach out to other communities. I can attest to back in March 15th and 18th, I was lost when it comes to the business community. We were getting requests for PPE like none other, asking whether we're essential or not. That was a big question. You know, we're shutting down, but what are we essential? And working with you on the phone and networking with 200 plus employees on the conference lines, we were able to successfully demonstrate and also communicate to them what they were required to do in order to stay operational. And that was to your leadership. You drove that forward, and I appreciate it. You were there as for us and the rest of the community to make sure our businesses stayed afloat and stayed operational. So again, I appreciate what you did, your team members, and just your leadership overall. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dave and Scott said it well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
And what is the pleasure of council in regard to the funding agreement with Lakeshore Advantage?
So moved. Item 12E, 6.2, Economic Development Lakeshore Advantage Funding Agreement.
All right. Moved by Corbin. Is there support?
Support. Oh, give it to the mayor.
Mr. Hoekstra has supported it. I will not cross the mayor pro tem. Any discussion by council members? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. It is 8:13 PM. Any communications from the city manager?
That sounded like a setup there, like I maybe shouldn't, but I actually do have two things that I really want to highlight this evening. First, it's broad, and I'm just going to continue to sing the praises of Kathy Grimm and her team managing the elections. For those of you, yes.
Here.
Just an amazing amount of work and pressure, and just with the environment that we're in, there's days when you come in and it's like, wow, there's way too many people in our lobby. And you'd like to ask, like, well, what are they here for? But you don't have to, because they're all, asking good questions and working to participate in the voting process. So just huge shout out to Kathy and her team. And she doesn't like to talk other than just calling your names periodically. So she provided me some information that I think just points to the amount of work that they're doing also. As of late this afternoon, they have issued 9,578 absentee ballots, and already 6,319 of those ballots have been returned, which of course tells both me and her that there's 2,200 that are probably coming in relatively soon. Now, just a number like that, absent kind of context, sometimes, it doesn't mean that much. So as a good clerk always does, she went back and she said, well, what happened last time in the presidential in 2016? And the total, I think I'm going to read this right, Kathy, you'll correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong. The total number of votes, all said, was 15,260. So roughly, that tells me that, we're approaching almost 2/3 of the number of votes that we had last time have already been issued in absentee ballots. So think of them the next couple weeks, and we definitely have extended kind of everything we can to Kathy and her team, and we'll certainly do that on the day before, the day of, and the day after Election Day. So quite frankly, for some of you, if you call some of the other offices and are looking for something, there's a good chance that you may not get that level of service on those days because it's kind of all hands on deck. And that was pretty fun, but I might even have one that's a little bit more enjoyable here, but I'm going to have to go up here a second. I think some of you already know this, but we had a fantastic day of partnership with Ottawa County yesterday with the Diversity Forum, and we had a lot of fun honoring someone that really deserves something, and there's just a priceless video that we couldn't go without showing tonight. So if you didn't hear that, she said, "Oh, I thought I was in trouble."
Come on over here, Judy. How are you?
I'm fine.
Well, happy Monday, and everybody, thank you for being here to help us celebrate Esther. Esther, you know our forum, diversity forum, that we have partnered with you and the City of Holland is coming up next week. And with that being said, the Ottawa County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, along with the Cultural Intelligence Committee, is proud to present this year's Excellence in Equity Award. So if you guys don't know much about the Excellence in Equity Award, the Excellence in Equity Award recognizes an individual that impacts the public sector field in Ottawa County and focuses on the importance of equity through their practices, programs, policies, and decision-making. Considerations for the award are submitted through a nomination process. An Excellence in Equity Award committee chooses the winner based on criteria presented. This year, we had over 7 nominations. We are so grateful for all the individuals that have been nominated, as well as who submitted all of the nominations. For the first Excellence in Equity Award was given in 2019, and to learn more about that, if you'd like, you can go to the Ottawa County website and search diversity or DEI. Shortly after the inception of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office, this year, 2020, marks the second award given. On behalf of the Equity Award Committee, we are happy to announce that this year's Excellent Equity Award recipient is Esther Fasalski of City of Holland Human Relations Director. So thank you, Esther. Yes. Thank you so much. So appreciate, and it's been such an honor getting to know you. I wanted to just read what a couple of your coworkers have said about you. Esther was nominated by 2 of her peers in the City of Holland, in which one has wrote, "They have been so impressed by Esther's untiring commitment to DEI and serving all persons in the city. Esther often works in order to help just one more person." And that was written by Catherine Bass. Sorry if I mispronounced the last name. She also serves on the Human Relations Board with you. Another coworker, Jennifer Orme, wrote, "Esther works tirelessly to advocate for our community members who face barriers, and they may often be underrepresented. She helps our organization and community to be more inclusive. She's extremely empathetic, intelligent, and has shown real leadership in her role as the city's Human and International Relations Director. She is a wonderful role model and mentor for the Holland Youth Advisory Council, and all who know her see her as a true public servant. Esther is so approachable and is able to make people feel comfortable, no matter the circumstances. She truly lives up to the city's mission statement, which is to maximize livability for all Holland community members." Thank you, Esther.
You did. I'm at a loss for words. I want to thank all of you, my peers, because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I love to do. This means so much to me, and Robin, it's been wonderful partnering with Ottawa County, and I'm so excited about the work that we're going to be doing in Ottawa County. This is going to make a big difference for our city and all the residents that we serve. And it's been wonderful getting to know everyone in the Diversity Forum program, and I'm so thankful to all of my peers. Thank you.
Okay. Very quickly, I know that, Esther, we also had a bio too for you, and I think we will make sure we put some of this up. But let me just read a little bit here on the bio for those of you who don't know Esther. She's been an outstanding and invaluable asset in advancing excellence in diversity and equity in very effective and impactful ways that have brought a lot of recognition and visibility to the City of Holland. As the Human Relations Director, a position she has held for the past 7 years due to her exceptional work, she has led and participated in a number of cross-cultural activities to promote the awareness of the Hispanic and Latinx people, heritage, and culture. Her department carries out the objectives of the Human Relations International Relations Commission and Youth Services, and the work of the department also encompasses civil rights and fair housing matters and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Esther says that all communities should plan, meaning they should pay attention to the local and national landscape, they should create a plan for a racial or bias incident, and should work for better ways to serve their community. Currently, she's working on a racial equity toolkit for the city, and the goal will be to have elements in place that will help the city factor racial equity into decision-making processes. She advocates for the underserved in the work that she does, normalizes the conversation of race, equity, and inclusion, and conveys community concerns to city leaders. Once again, thank you, Esther. Congratulations.
So very well deserved, and just a fantastic representative of the city. And wasn't that look that she gave when she came in the room just priceless? And I told her, because I was a little worried, because yes, I was in on kind of surprising her that day, which normally she doesn't go for. But my only saving grace was Cinca was in deep with me too. So we did okay. So there was no way I was not going to go ahead and share that with you this evening, because we're very proud of our clerk, and we're very proud of Esther also. So thank you. That's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. And kudos, Kathy. Thank you for the great work that you're doing, and to Esther as well. It's great to hear great things about our great staff. So we appreciate it. And keep your nose to the grindstone. It's only 2 more weeks. Only 2 more weeks. Let's hope, right? Only 2 more weeks? Just 2 more weeks? Next item 14A, mayoral appointment to city boards and commissions. I have one appointment this evening. I'd ask council to please accept the appointment of Joseph Havman to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for a partial term, the partial term expiring June 30 of 2023. Joe Havman will replace authority member Merle Prinz, who did not seek reappointment for this term, which expired on June 30 of 2020. And I would recommend that for approval by council or acceptance by council.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support? Support by Garcia. Any discussion? And I believe we can do that on a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then I do have one proclamation today. It is the Extra Mile Day Proclamation. Whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. And whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual aspirations, family, friends, and community. And whereas Holland, Michigan is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and to lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Holland, Michigan acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 553 extra mile cities in America, and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1, 2020. Now therefore, I, Nathan Box, Mayor of the City of Holland, Michigan, do hereby proclaim November 1, 2020 as Extra Mile Day. And I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day, not only to go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. Given under my hand and the seal of the City of Holland on the 21st day of October 2020. So November 1, 2020, Extra Mile Day in the City of Holland. Next item, appointments, motions, and communications from council members. Mr. Corbin.
So I spoke with a few of my colleagues on the board here. We have been recording our study sessions, and we did that by kind of a general consensus, not really a vote by this board, on whether to do that, because there were some high-profile issues before us, and we wanted to make opportunities for people to listen in and attend those study sessions. I was just wondering, are we going to continue that, and what's the desire of this board to continue recording our study sessions?
Any comment from other council members in regard to that? I know personally I'd be supportive of that myself, I know that we did that. We moved down here into city council chambers. We've got a little extra space here now. I would not have any problem with not broadcasting those study sessions moving forward. Nikki, I'm sorry, I saw that you were going to speak.
I agree. I miss the more informal, looking at everyone and discussion type of format. So if it didn't need to be recorded, I think there's no good reason to stay here during study sessions.
Yeah. Lynn?
We have fewer opportunities for people to attend our study sessions right now, and so I'm comfortable with continuing having them live streamed so that people can attend until things are back to normal.
Any other comments from council members? Yeah, Quincy.
I'm sure somebody would be happy if we did that.
And the comments you're making is we have someone who needs to come here and work in order to be able to film us and to broadcast these. And would just as soon probably have those Wednesday nights off.
Correct.
Yeah. Other comments from council? Yeah, go ahead, Raul.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd be supportive of going back. Obviously, one of the major reasons, in addition to COVID, was just some of the items that I think we had that had a lot of attention and needed to have that public input. Not to say that any other items, moving forward, do not, but I do think that we can accommodate, some of that space. So I guess I'm, either way, I guess I'm comfortable with, but I can also see why it's unnecessary at this point.
And the public can continue to email in comments for the study session.
Public can still email comments. We would still be holding those study sessions here in council chambers because there would still be space open. One thing that we always need to make clear is the responsibility for the building and the health and the safety of city staff is the responsibility of our city manager. And currently, we are only allowing the public to enter into the lobby area and into council chambers to be able to provide for, again, the health and the safety of the staff members. So we wouldn't be moving back upstairs until it was deemed safe to be able to do that. But the public could still attend those meetings personally here, and if they wanted to make public comment, obviously could do public comment at the City of Holland as well. All that we're talking about, I think, if I'm getting it right here, Scott, is just not broadcasting them, all of those meetings, because we hadn't broadcasted them prior to COVID.
Right, just going back to the usual way of doing things that we have been doing in the past. And certainly I do not mean anything regarding the regular board meeting at all when we're taking votes and solidifying our positions on certain issues.
Any other comments, discussion?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Dave.
Just so I'm understanding, you're suggesting that we go back to not broadcasting the preceding study sessions, is that correct? Is that how I'm
the alternate Wednesday study sessions.
Okay. The only thing I would say to that is that I think the more that what we do is made available to the public, I think we create a more aware public. If you recall some of the comments that were made tonight in public comment period, apparently there are some people who aren't aware of what we are doing. I don't know if that's a facetious comment on my part or not, but in general, if we have the wherewithal to do it, and it's practical to do it, I think the more that we're available to the public, the better. So that's just my 5 cents worth.
Anyone else? I'm hearing, yes, Mr. Van Beek.
So I think it says that I get to be part of these conversations in some way, and certainly I don't want to weigh in other than maybe just confirming something that the mayor said and then maybe some clarifications that I would just like to know. One, yes, I do definitely want to make clear that until something changes, I do not want to have these meetings up and I don't think anyone's suggesting that, but just to be perfectly clear, that we won't be returning up there. I would also suggest, and just to be clear, because I heard something that you'd have study sessions, but you'd be sitting in this format.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I really don't want to do something either, because this is the best way that, You know, our facilities are great in that way, that we can have this distancing, so I'd want to do that. And then the other thing that I don't want to be in the position of is in any way, shape, or form deciding what somehow is worthy of a study session that's recorded or not. So whatever you decide is great. I just want it to be kind of across the board type thing, because I don't want to be in the position of deciding what's worthy of recording and not. So those be the only things that I would ask as the person that would carry these out, that whatever you decide, you're clear on what you're passing on to me.
Scott?
So the current practices surrounding COVID-19 is not going to end anytime soon. This is going to go on through past probably March, May of next year. So I would suggest that we're looking at doing what we've always done as a city council. You know, we made an exception for those particular issues that came before us. We made the exception while we were unaware what we were going to do and how we were going to really handle a lot of the COVID issues before us. But we're in a much bigger room for our study sessions than we've ever have. There's plenty of room people to sit and to make public comment, to email public comment. That's an additional thing that we never had before. I mean, so we've made a lot of exceptions to that. So the question for me was, what's the purpose of continuation of what outside what we have already done in normal board procedures? We made the exception, and now why are we continuing that? What was the mechanics behind continuing that?
Yeah, I can speak probably a little bit to that in terms of the initial decision that was made back in March, and we were making an awful lot of decisions pretty quickly in a pretty uncertain environment in March, and wanted to make sure that we kept as many options open and provided as much the highest level of safety and care for people's health as we possibly could in March. And so I think that was the reason why the decision was just kind of unilaterally made in March, saying we need to adapt with what we're doing. I think that now, 6 months later, we've got the opportunity to be kind of circumspect in those decisions that we've made, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want a unilateral decision to be made. I wanted this discussion to happen within the council, because I wanted the council to have the opportunity to make that decision. I think it made sense in March to say, we're going to make a quick, prudent decision in regard to health, safety, and welfare. But now I think it's important that we all have the opportunity to weigh in on this. And since I'm hearing, Jay, let me finish up what I'm going to say, and then, and what I'm hearing is some differing opinions on this. So I think it may make sense for us to actually take a vote on this. But having said that, and finishing that statement, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess when I first heard the conversation, I thought we were making an argument to have these, as a matter of routine, be broadcast for the public to listen. So what I'm hearing is we're thinking about going back and not broadcasting. And what I would say to that is I think our study sessions are when some of the most frank, open discussions about each one of us feel about certain issues and things in the community. And I think the more the community hears what each of us have to say about what we think about what we vote on is important. And I would welcome that opportunity for the public to listen to our study sessions, because I think that's where a lot of meat is what's it, ground up. Something gets ground up in the gist of you know what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say. So I've always thought that was something we should do. So I would certainly be in favor of get us out there. Let them hear what you have to say. Let them hear what you're thinking, and let them hear about why you vote the way you vote. I think that's important.
That's a good argument.
Yeah, Scott?
Councilman Peters, I agree with the transparency. Where I do have a little bit of, I coil back a little bit, is that oftentimes our study sessions, we have good debate. We have good dialogue. I get a sense that it's not occurring as much as it used to. And part of that is we're not thinking out of the box. We're not coming up with different ideas and ways to do things. And we're stifling that creativity within this board because we don't have that luxury. And part of it is people are a little bit fearful of being recorded for coming out with some really maybe off-the-wall ideas to try and think out of the box. And then all of a sudden, people are upset that they even said or suggested something that might have been, hey, look, I'm trying to think of another possible solution for this. And I think it stifles a little bit of our ability to have those deeper conversations. So that's where I'm coming from. I love the transparency, but I think if that's the case, then we should be looking as a board to moving to record all of our committees and all of our boards. Because if that's what you really want, is full transparency, but I think that's going to stifle the creativity and discussion that we all have. That doesn't mean people can't come and participate and still listen to what we're debating over, what we're dialing over. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when we make a decision, each one of us at a regular board meeting have an opportunity to speak why we're making that final decision. We have an opportunity to articulate why we're taking the position we're taking on that issue. I think that's what's most important to the people, that when we finally take that vote, why we're taking it, not so much how we're coming to a conclusion internally ourselves. We can deliberate with them via email or phone call or meeting with them one-on-one. But ultimately, I think it's really stifling the ability for all of us to have those deeper conversations, thinking out of the box, creativity that we need to have in order to set our future for the city of Holland.
Raul, I see the wheels turning. I just want to make sure that you don't miss your window on this.
Yeah, I mean, there was a moment, I think, when we were yet meeting upstairs, that I wondered, because of the robust, conversations that we have that often lead to a decision, right? And you kind of don't get that context if you're not attending study sessions sometimes. And you're right, I think maybe we can do a better job at our, preparing ourselves and our kind of our moments and articulating that before a vote. But there was I guess, a moment upstairs where I wondered if there was a capacity, to record those sessions. And that becomes my question again. So once all of this kind of normalizes again and we, move into that space, is it done at that point? Or what would be, the transition then?
I see some sets of eyes looking at me there, and what I would say there is we are not very well set up to effectively record the study sessions upstairs. This obviously is very well set up to do that, so I would not recommend, from a technical perspective, that recording the meetings upstairs is set up very well to do that, nor probably without a lot of work and thought and, maneuvering, because it's not just setting up the cameras, it's the angles and all that kind of stuff. I would tend to say my recommendation would be, when you move back upstairs, we want to tape those meetings upstairs. Now, that's not ultimately my decision, right? But you asked the question, and that's kind of the recommendation that I would have.
Would we have the same capacity to record and cover them with the same degree of excellence if we've had kind of our semicircle set up here or in that corner of the room? Obviously over there the camera angles wouldn't work, but here, right, if we're setting up kind of a three-way or a C shape or not.
I hesitate to give a firm answer to
Matt,
that, Raul, I guess. And of course, that's another thing I'm going to talk to Matt about on Monday morning when he returns from vacation. I think we could do it. Then we're getting in the situation where, quite frankly, we didn't order the amount of furniture. I mean, it seems like we do, but we really don't have the furniture in the room to do that. So every time we would, I think we'd have to. And we could do that. I'm not saying that we couldn't, but it'd be a little bit of a thing, right? To every time haul that down here, set it up. So you never say never, right? But it would be a bunch of work.
Right, and I raise those questions because of the practical implications of if we head down that road, or what that all looks like. Otherwise, yeah, do we make that decision now?
And I will just add, a little separate from this, but it's always been a source of frustration, to your point, Councilman Hoekstra, of of getting the word out to the public, you know, even about things on Planning Commission or this Udo, and how come people aren't showing up? How aren't they, or, you know, the comment today. And I think how does the word get out? And so sometime we might want to address that too. I mean, all these, we did during the, at the advance, we talked a little bit about that, and the churches that weighed in and how did that word get out. But I don't know, we have a newspaper, we have social media, we have a website. Who uses this? I don't know. So that's just something for another time. Now, it's half and half. I don't know. I guess it's good to be transparent and have this open to the public and recorded all the time. And yet, we never used to do that either.
Mr.
You
Hoekstra.
got a coin?
Yeah, this decision has some significance, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I'm trying to recall, I don't think we have an official policy that addresses whether we will broadcast specific meetings or not, or we, you know, how we do that. I don't think it's in our council rules that I recall. Don't think it's in the charter. It's just how we do stuff. So when I made the comment, if we have the wherewithal to do it, that's sort of where my mind was. If we can do it, if it's not overly burdensome, then why not do it? But if we move upstairs and it's a big deal and it's gonna cost more money and we have to raise taxes to everybody in order to do that, I would certainly say, well, okay, we'll suspend it for a while. My guess is life will go on regardless, one way or the other, but still the point is, if we can easily, as Gandhi says, what we can do, we'll try to do. If we can easily make our discussions more available to the public, and I get your point about there may be some inhibition knowing that the camera is on, but that's something we have to get over, you know, and we should feel a certain sense of comfort, that's the word I was trying to think of, in being able to disagree with each other or have robust discussions or yell at each other or whatever it is that we do. I don't think it's generally, you know, that far out there that it's objectionable. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think this is, it's important, but it's not, you know, life-changing. It's not that big a deal. If we can do it, let's do it. If we're not, we'll do something else. That's all.
Thanks, Dave. Jay.
Just to be, I think if we decide, I wish Matt Van Dyken was here, maybe. Maybe you shouldn't have let him go on vacation this week. I don't know. It's a big meeting here. But I would like to think that, I think what Dave has teed up there is, well, if it's not that big a deal, I'd like to do it. Well, what is, when you say what is the big deal? Are we talking about investment in a couple of cameras in a pretty highly technical building that we sit in? I would hate to have a $20,000 investment to be able to do this be put on the table as saying, well, it's just gonna be kind of a hassle. I just want to make sure that if 9 people sitting up here decided that's something they wanted to do, I'd like to think we can make that happen.
Quincy.
Yeah, one of the things I was wondering, do we track viewership? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, everything that's on YouTube. What's a little bit harder is I'm not sure about the kind of the TV feed.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, that there. I think that would help in decision making. And then, you know, I jokingly said they're, you know, pointing to the wall behind us, because there are times when we are here pretty late. And, you know, I really, I want to be cognitive of everyone's time, you know, so we go from him being here 2 times a month to now it's every Wednesday. That is all right, I recant. So
Do you want to say what you just heard from right behind you there, Quincy?
He said not a problem.
And that's true for now. What I will say about the upstairs that Matt will weigh in on, but when you have multiple camera angles, that's easy to manage here. The biggest thing that we would have is if you go back upstairs, that's the thing that I'm like, all right, that's probably gonna be a lot more complicated. Than just like, okay, there's slap a couple more cameras. It's managing it all, and we're set up to do that here. We're not set up to do that up there.
I am not for doing that upstairs at all.
Yeah, we're 3 weeks out from our next study session, correct? And we have another regular meeting in between now.
A lot of things are gonna happen in 3 weeks, I think.
And there's nothing really much going on in the world in the next 3 weeks. And so maybe we can ask our staff to perhaps get us some information on how difficult it would be technically upstairs when Matt returns, and some idea of what our viewership is on this, because this is, well, I guess essentially what I'm saying is not a decision we have to make tonight, because we've got another regular meeting before we have another study session.
So you don't have to do this. What I would say is you really have two decisions, it sounds like. What do you want to do most immediately? Because we're not going upstairs anytime soon.
Yep.
So we can maybe press pause on that decision, right? And maybe just say that you press pause. But perhaps if you want, and I'm not pushing you, if you want to just delay this decision too, the more immediate decision is, what do you do with study sessions for the immediate future when they're here?
I concur, and that's exactly the question I had. It's
Okay.
not about the upstairs. It is about what we nodded our heads, not voted, kind of nodded and agreed that because there was some larger issue, and one or two larger issues that we wanted community input because of this COVID deal was kind of creating a problem for us in getting these people here, allowing them to attend. We were going to record those sessions for that purpose. We never made a decision collectively as a board to record all of our study sessions. There was never an agreement to that, and that wasn't the precedence prior to that. So I'm just asking, do we want to continue that? And for what reason do we want to continue that? I gave you my reason for why I think we shouldn't, and not because I don't want to be transparent. I'm okay with transparency, but I do still believe it's stifling some of us on the board here from being very clear about what we think about certain issues, and then coming out with some creative ideas and in our discussions during these study sessions, which used to happen. And if that's the case, we're not getting the full potential from every one of us. But also at the same time, I think there will be more challenges coming before us, and we're going to start asking each other questions. I want to hear from each one of you. I don't want you to sit back, twiddle your thumbs, and wait until the next regular board meeting and just vote. I want to hear your position on stuff. And frankly, there's half of you that probably sit back and don't give your opinion on certain issues. I want to hear those. And is this study session, which is what the study sessions were intended to do, was to allow us to have that deliberation amongst ourselves, think out of the box, be creative, have dialogue with each other, agree to disagree, and formulate a good opinion. Each one of us formulate a good opinion that we would vote on a particular issue. I just think it would be good practice to go back to what we were doing originally. But again, we got here. I want to know if we're going to continue that practice. I think we should, make it more formal if that's the intention of this board. But I'd like to hear from everybody on this issue.
Mr. Trethewey.
He was looking specifically.
I know he was.
And I've been specifically silent on this. Because I was told early on not to talk tonight, so I'm following what you said. You did. Being the old guy here, I cannot fall into the just because we did it that way. I can't fall that way. I understand the arguments on both sides. They have very good merit. I think the reasoning for not doing study sessions outside of the fact of the room was because of the participation level. Most of the time that we have the study session, it is for our discussion, but it is by presenters. It is not for public input, and I remember a time in the past where we did not have public comment at study sessions before the state law changed. Not saying that it's wrong, and I'm not trying to hide anything, and we're not trying to crawl away and I can see the headlines tomorrow. Council goes into chambers and wants to avoid the public. No, that's not it at all. I'm going to support, if you go to a motion, I'm going to support the fact that we suspend the study session tapings. With a caveat, it will be a decision of this group of 9 that if we have another situation like we had going into the reason why we did this, coming down here, that it will be polled by this group, and this group will make that decision as a whole. That's my only caveat on that, and that's the way it should be. Don't want to put the onus on the city manager or solely on the mayor. He is the leader of this group, but we make up the leadership of this. And it has to be a collective decision based on that. So, if you feel strongly enough, I will support if you make the motion.
I would entertain a motion.
So, exactly, Mike, I think that's the interpretation the paper will give, is somehow we don't want to be transparent, but I've given my position on how I feel about this, and I think it's going to only benefit us as a council. Because I've seen the political environment, and it's not good when we start recording people making mistakes, making comments that, they were trying to think through the process or saying something, and then all of a sudden, that's the opportunity that we take to put on a YouTube video or something of that nature. So it's not that I'm not trying to be transparent, it's just I want to make sure this dialogue is happening between us, and they deserve it. The public deserves it, that we have those really robust dialogues that we used to have upstairs that we don't currently have. I don't feel like we're having. So I'd make a motion that we suspend the current recordings of our study sessions until such time this board decides that an issue is important enough to record. I guess that would be the motion I would make.
Okay.
And I will support that motion.
Moved by Corbin, support by Trethewey. Discussion. Yeah, Mr. Hoekstra.
Okay, I think I'm understanding the motion, but just to make sure that I'm understanding it, is that we would be agreeing to suspend recording and broadcasting, by whatever means, our study sessions, both here and upstairs, but we reserve the right to go back on that decision or alter our decision if we deem a particular issue or condition requires that. Is that right?
Yeah. If a particular issue or condition warrants that's necessary.
And that would be by a vote of council.
I would hope so.
That's my understanding, and again, and thank you, Mike, for not putting the onus on the mayor and the city manager. It was I think that March, when the decision was made, was a unique situation that I don't think any of us had seen before, and we needed to make quick decisions, and in an environment that people were not coming out, and B, not supposed to come out. I had somebody remind me today, said, remember the times when you had to have a note with you to say where it was you were going in case you got stopped by public safety or the police, because you weren't supposed to be out on the roads. There was a stay-at-home order in place when that happened, and so we made the decision, since people can't legally come to see us, we're going to make ourselves available to them. Well, people can come and see us legally now. Yeah, Quincy.
Want to correct you a
Yes.
little bit, and everybody here, but when we started talking about the LGBTQ or the non-discrimination ordinance, we had already decided that we were going to have our study sessions aired during that time. So that was before COVID. So going back to what Mike had said, and we never took a vote, that was just something that we communicated together. So going back to what Mike said, we've already used that process, except we didn't take a formal vote during that time.
Thank you for the clarification on that. I had not remembered that, but thank you.
And I would also say, if we are going to continue to record, we should always record, and let's just always do our study sessions down here. I mean, it's kind of if this is how everyone wants these to be recorded, we should always stay down here. And we're not going to do that, I hope. I mean, I did enjoy the training session room for study sessions, so we either go one way or we go the other. So I would support not recording this study session here.
Lynn?
Yeah, and I will likely not support the motion. However, what I would like to say is that I'm hearing what you're saying about people not feeling comfortable in the study sessions now as they're recorded, and I think what I will try to do moving forward is to make sure that that's not happening with me, and would encourage everyone else to do that as well. I don't notice that, but you do, and so maybe, and not just about you, but maybe about some others, and so I will, recorded or not, I'm gonna try to be better at making sure that I'm, offering and expressing my opinion more clearly.
Yeah, Quincy?
One more thing. I probably will support this, but I kind of want to table this. And I say that because one of the things that I asked about before was the viewership numbers. And if the viewership numbers come in and they're very low, I think maybe we do table it and we go back to the process that we had before.
Are you moving to table the motion?
I am moving to table the motion.
Okay, is there support?
I'll support it.
Okay.
Support by Hoekstra. Okay, this is one of those tricky parliamentary procedure things that we don't do often enough, that I want to make sure that we're doing this right. I believe now that there's a motion and there's support. We vote on the motion to table.
That's correct.
And if the the motion to table, then that needs to be dealt with before the motion itself. So.
Correct.
But now we need to do discussion on the motion to table. No, there's just a vote?
Yep.
And we do voice vote on that? Parliamentarian?
Yes.
Yes. All those in favor of tabling this motion until, do we need to do a specific meeting time or date?
No, you don't have to. It could be tabled indefinitely. It could be tabled to a specific date, but there wasn't one in motion.
There wasn't one in the motion. I'm gonna be flexible on this, and Quincy, say, would you like to table this until a particular time?
I'm going to ask to table this until we get information regarding the viewership.
Okay, and do you continue to support that, Mr. Hoekstra?
Sure.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
No.
I'm going to call for a roll call on that one, Kathy.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
No.
Byrd?
Yes.
Peters? Yes. Garcia?
No.
Trethewey?
No.
Arnshorst?
No.
Corbin?
No.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
3 yes, 6 no.
All right, motion fails to table. We are back to the original motion then. Discussion on the motion that's before us now, which is to suspend the recording of our study sessions. Yes, Mr. Corbin.
So some things that we did forget about what we used to do in study sessions too, those were also accompanied by students, and students being able to communicate and talk and participate with our process. If you recall, that was part of it. So I just want to remind people what that looks like. When we can't do it now, we've decided not to do that, but there were some reasons, part reasons why I assume some of those things weren't recorded either. So there's a lot of things that were going on in our study sessions that were different than what we currently are doing. So just to remind everybody of that as well.
Any other comments from council members? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Raul.
It's getting late. I apologize.
No. Anyways, yeah, just a quick clarification. I know we keep saying recorded, but I think really the motivation was to broadcast it for more people to participate kind of in the moment, as opposed to just to rehash the recording later. So I know that when we're saying recording, but I think it's really kind of broadcasting that live streamed. But yeah, I mean, I'll vote in favor.
Anyone else? Just one last statement on this. I am all for transparency, and boy, I did not think that Gandhi was going to come up in the discussion this evening. And I'm 100% for it. And Lynn, as what you said, I hadn't noticed that folks weren't participating. That obviously, Scott, you are. And I'm one that's definitely not shy, whether there's a microphone on or whether there's a TV camera on. But if there are folks out there, I think that is our issue. That's not the public's issue. If we're having a difficult time expressing ourselves, we need to be the ones that step up and express ourselves in that regard. And so in that regard, Scott, I think I'm gonna lean toward voting no on that, because I think hearing all of the council members and the arguments that they're making, that I think that there's some value to the public and being able to see how the sausage is made. I think that was where you were going with that, Jay, wasn't it? Yeah, kinda? Okay. Although my office is across from Central Park Market, and I've seen them make Balkan Bry, and you do not want to see them make Balkan Bry. So any other comments from council members? One last one. Go ahead, Raul.
Back on my comment, right? So my comment. The reason I mentioned that is because I think that's kind of the motivation. Again, if we decide, right, if we go back to not recording, our motivation for deciding on broadcasting that is because we kind of get this sense that there's going to be larger participation than what we can accommodate, right? I mean, it's not just to have it recorded, but it's because there's a sense that there's greater participation than what this room can allow.
Great. Anyone else? Yes, Dave.
Just a last comment. This is not a hill I'm going to choose to live or die on. But it does strike me that, one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because the way that we do life is changing, and the way that we experience each other is changing. We do it a lot more electronically now than we used to. So I think, regardless of how this vote goes, I think it warrants us to keep it in mind and think as we go forward, is this something that we should deal with at some point later on, as more people tend to interact with each other or gain information or find out about what we do electronically rather than in person. I think it's not something that's going to go away. Again, it's not going to be terribly life-changing in my view at this juncture, but that's just my impression. But I think it does behoove us to keep it in mind farther down the road. Thank you.
Yeah.
And who knows, we may put in recording equipment upstairs someday.
That's a possibility. And I've got one last comment myself, and I think one issue that has not been mentioned is that we did, as Raul said, we did this because we wanted to make sure we could accommodate the largest number of people possible for those big issues that we saw coming down the pipeline. And I made the comment earlier that my recollection too was that it was in part because when COVID hit, we continued that process because it wasn't legal for people to come out. One thing that has been mentioned is there are still folks who are immunocompromised, folks who are not comfortable coming into a public setting. And as I've heard you say many times, Mr. Trethewey, we are responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the city of Holland. And if there's something that we can do as a body that helps ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the city of Holland, that we can get that information out to them, allow them to participate in the process, and still provide for that, I think that's a valuable thing to do. So, Scott, you want to pat?
No.
No, did you turn your microphone off or did you turn it on? I saw your hand go there.
I turned it on because
You're a lawyer.
this is exactly the dialogue I've been wanting in a lot of issues that we've been having before us. And we just had it. This is a wonderful part of democracy, right? All of us sitting here and walking through this together. Now, listening to all of you, I know I made the motion. I know I had support in the motion, but we had some dialogue that is actually might just change my mind a little bit here on this.
Am I going to have to pull my parliamentary procedure book out again?
Well, not necessarily. I'm still making a comment. I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Technology is changing, and we are probably going to, recordings are probably going to happen more frequently. But apparently my colleagues are willing to have this dialogue. They're willing to speak up, and that's what I like to hear. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to think out of the box. I want you to be creative. We can't get through this without doing that. And I don't care if I get elected next time. I really don't. I hope all of you don't. I hope you don't. I hope you care more about the issue and dialoguing with each other and coming to a great solution for the people out there. So after hearing what you guys have to say and the passion you have behind it, I will probably not support my own motion.
Since we've really made sausage tonight, then if I might suggest withdraw your motion and we can all go home.
Do you think people really want to watch this?
It's a beautiful country or what?
I appreciate the conversation also, Scott.
Yeah, it really
Thank you
was.
for bringing it up. Just go ahead and withdraw your motion. I will second your withdrawal and we'll go home.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Supported.
Moved and supported to withdraw the motion. Are there any other communications from council? Yes.
I do have one thing to say, and I can't leave it on the table. The Human Relations Commission is sponsoring a 3-part series called The Art of Listening. And after this conversation, this was brilliant, and the first session was brilliant, and I would really recommend you taking some time and listening to it.
Was this the first session?
First session.
This was recorded to be the
Like-
first session, is that what you're saying?
What you learned from the first session, you used at this session.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
Did we do a good job?
Any other communications from council members or motions from council members? Yes, Quincy.
I like the extra mile day on November 1st. I look at what you said, the definition of extra mile, and look around Holland, and there are a lot of extra milers here in Holland, so that's a pretty cool thing. I wanted to address what happened earlier today. When we had a Hispanic group come in, we as a council had a lot of different special interest groups come in, and we as a council decided that we would not take up the cause for special interest groups. And what drove us to that decision was different situations that we had where people came to us wanting support, and we just decided as a council that it would be in our best interest not to do that. We've taken that stance also with artwork. If an individual brings artwork to us to put it in the city in a location or something, we have decided that we would not take that artwork. And so as they started chanting, we left. And, I was torn at that time how I felt about that. And I'm not going to go into that, but some people, I'm sure, agreed with it. Some people, I'm sure, didn't agree with it. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood where we sat, why we made and did what we did why we made the decision to do what we did during that time. I just felt it would be best to address it, let people know that this wasn't just, we are not listening, but this is a decision that we have made a long time ago. I won't say a long time ago, a couple of years ago. So it's not that we are tuning people out, because that is absolutely not what we want to do. And we sat here talking about that just recently on this last subject that Scott brought up. One of the things that if you do have these things and you bring them to us, one of the things that I have not seen with this group is how do we contact if there is something that as individuals we want to support. And again, when we made the decision not to do it as a group, we did say that as individuals, we have every right to support the group that we felt we wanted to support. So if you bring something, I suggest bring contact information as well. This resonates with me. I understand what happens when these situations arise for the individuals. I had a friend who I was really close to, and in 2012, he was deported back to Mexico. He had 5 kids and a wife, and I'll use good language, that family is in turmoil now. It's in turmoil now because the lack of a father figure in that house. So there is some, I understand the situation is what I'm saying. So again, if you bring something to us, and the mayor has spoken as well, saying that we do not support resolutions. And if you bring something to us, it's information only, and bring contact information, because as individuals, we can't support some of those things. So again, I just wanted to state why we haven't moved on the resolution, why we ended up leaving. We thought it was best for us to leave in that situation. So good, bad, indifferent, however you want to look at it, that's the decision as a council that we made. So as a council, we stick together. And thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Quincy. Mike?
Thank you, Quincy, for that. There has to be just a tad bit of clarification for where you were going, because it's a tad bit confusing. When you said that we don't support resolutions, that is not correct. We don't support resolutions that we do not have direct control over, such as what was brought before us today. That was the decision of this collective body, that if we could not have the influence that the city of Holland, within its confines, could grant those licenses, we could not support the resolution as a body of the whole. You are absolutely correct. We are also individuals, and if on an individual basis, not acting as a member of this board, we would like to support such a thing, absolutely. That right has never been taken away. So that's a very needed definition of why we took the stance that we did. And that was part of the rules of council that we had done a couple, 3 years ago, because of situations very similar to this body. And that's the way we chose to deal with that. The meeting was disrupted. We had 2 choices. We actually only had 1 choice, and that was to suspend the meeting, remove ourselves from a situation, let it cool down, and come back. It cooled down, we came back, and we were able to go on.
Correct.
And in all my years here, that's the first time that this has happened. And I'm really hoping that it never happens again. Typically, when people come here, they're very passionate about what's going on. We've had, and Dave and Jay remember this, we've had a couple of issues, specifically with the fire department, if I remember correctly, was one of the big ones. Trying to pare some of that back from the part-time or the joint fire department with Park Township, the fire station that we had. There's a number of issues that come before us that people are very passionate about. And if they get a little loud, if they get a little boisterous, if they get out of line, we simply ask them. And it's typically respected. Things settle down and we're able to carry on. This one was not going to get that way, so it was a decision that we had to make. The mayor looked at me. I made the motion as the CGO. That's why we exited the room. So that's the procedure. That's why we did what we did, and part of the reasons behind what we did with not supporting specific resolutions like that.
Right. Thanks for that clarification. I wrote that down about stuff that we do not have jurisdiction over, but I guess I didn't look at my notes. Lesson learned.
Yes. Mr. Van Beek?
Just to plug in, because I hear you kind of looking for the term, and I was the one directed to come up with, and the language that we use, the key term, operational jurisdiction. So that you would not, your board rule, not is that you would not adopt resolutions that do not fall within your operational jurisdiction.
Great. Thank you. All three of you gentlemen, thank you. Any other communications from council members and/or motions from council members?
Just a couple
Yes,
quick,
Raul.
yeah, quick comments. So I think I've just been inspired to be quicker to the gun, because you guys beat me to what I wanted to make sure was said. But I appreciate that you guys both address that. So that kind of aside, I think I'm also I don't think any of us were anticipating that this was going to be an eventful night. I mean, when we're looking at our agenda. But I am encouraged with a number of things that came up, and the discussion certainly, but then also with the election and with Esther's nomination and award. Just of all the great things that are happening amidst, right? I mean, this crazy time. There's still so many uncertainties that there's a lot yet to try to plan forward toward. We have no idea what even once some of the restrictions go away, and there's still the kind of the effect and impact to follow just of this season. But it is encouraging to see all of the good that has taken place in the city and throughout the city amidst kind of this pandemic. So I'm encouraged by that, and I hope everyone who has paid attention today is as well.
Great. Thank you, Earl. Any other communications from council members? Motions from council members?
Motion.
Oh, one, yes, Mr. Corbin.
That we adjourn?
Moved by
appropriate?
Corbin.
Unless you guys want to
And
table
supported-
that.
Was that you, Raul, or was that Jay? That was Jay. Support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you all.